Our sermon text for this evening comes from Exodus chapter 18, verses 13 through 27. The next day Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone, and all the people stand around you from morning till evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. And when they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. Now obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God, and you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws, and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. And let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any small matter they shall decide themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you, and you will be able to endure. And all this people also will go to their place in peace." And so Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter they decided themselves. And then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country.
Dear God, we love you. Thanks for loving us. Thanks for forgiving us. Thanks you never leave us. You never forsake us. Thanks that you are enough. And I pray you open our eyes even to understand this passage. And God, that we would just behold you in a sweeter way even tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. So you ever get to the end of the day and you just feel like there's so many things that you didn't get to? Like your last moment before you go to bed is thinking about all the things on your list that remain undone. I mean, thinking about all the things on your list that remain undone, it can be exhausting, right? Me and Wes, our cohort for school, we got like a text thread, and they like to text a lot, but everyone keeps taking pictures of their diplomas that are coming in the mail, and of course mine is not in the mail because I still have my final edits to make, and I haven't turned my final paper in yet. I got letters I'm supposed to write that I haven't got to. I got projects I've been assigned to that I'm late on. And that's not counting all of the projects that I got in my head, that I've started on, that I've never gotten around to finishing. These are just projects. You start throwing in relational things. All of a sudden, I got friends that I need to check in to see how they're doing. People I should message that are going through a difficult season. I should probably give my parents a call. Haven't talked to my sister in a long time. I should be checking in more on the kids. Probably owe each of them a date. Of course, even if I miraculously got all that done somehow, it wouldn't take long before I'd be convinced that I should have done all of those things better. Could have been more intentional when I called my friend. Could have asked better questions when I took my wife on a date. Could have used a better illustration, or I missed the quote I could have used in that article. I mean, thinking about all the good things that we haven't done that are on our list, it's exhausting, right? There always seems to be more good that we can think of doing than we ever get around to actually doing. You ever feel that way? I'm kind of going out on a limb. I decided to, and I'm just going to assume somebody out there feels this way, right? And of course, if we're honest, most of us will probably admit it's not like we use our time as well as we could. We Probably waste a lot of our times on our phones, waste some time doing urgent things that really aren't nearly as important as the things we're leaving undone. And so we got this list that we're struggling to get through, and then you can add on that the guilt that we feel because we know that we're not being as efficient as we could be or using our time as well as we should be. If we were only a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more motivated, a little bit more focused, could at least get a few more things off that list. And then maybe something happens to somebody that you love inevitably, right? And you start to think, man, I should have called him. Did I miss something? Was I distracted? Could it have been prevented if I would have only been there for them? Was I too busy? Were there warning signs that I should have seen? These are all the places that our minds go when we get a little peace and quiet, maybe in the few moments after you stop watching your show when you decide you're going to try to fall asleep. Of course, these places aren't very comfortable to be, right? Nobody likes these thoughts, which is a good explanation for why we keep ourselves so distracted. We distract ourselves because we feel like we're not doing enough, and then, of course, we feel guilty for all the time we waste distracting ourselves when we know we should be doing more. It gets exhausting, right? A little bit exhausting. And so what do we think? We think, I need a break. I just need a vacation, right? Day off. Just need to take some deep breaths. But taking breaks, some of you may have found, only adds to your list when you get back from your break, right? You ever get back from a vacation and your list has only grown longer? You see, when the problem is that you don't think you're doing enough, taking a break doesn't solve it. I mean, to be honest with you, I find it more refreshing to check things off my list than I do to take a break and watch my list get longer. I prefer, that's why I personally like to work more than vacation, but that's because of the first 2 pages that I just read to you. So, you see, the 1 week out of the year where I probably get my best rest, the year I feel most refreshed, is serve the city. It's like the one time where when basketball camp's over and I get home and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I can just lay down on the couch and I can just breathe and I can feel like I've done enough. Like, at least for this day, it's okay to take a break. Physically, I feel exhausted, but my mind feels at peace because I get the sense during that week out of the year that this is enough. I kind of get the feeling that this is a little bit like Moses may be feeling in Exodus 18. Look at verse 13. It says, the next day Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning to evening. From morning to evening, Moses dedicates every waking moment of his day to serving others. There's no doubt it was tiring. There's no doubt he was exhausted when he was done. But I would not be surprised if in the midst of his exhaustion, he felt like I feel during the week of Serve the City. He feels tired, but he knows he's spent his day serving others. He feels tired, but he knows he's given literally everything that he has. And so the moment he goes to bed, he's feeling at peace. He feels tired, but when people come to him with their problems and he speaks to them a word from God and he sees them go away at peace, he feels like he's accomplished something, like he's done something meaningful, like he is doing what he was made to do. It seems likely that he goes to bed believing that he is doing what God has called him to do. Now, on this particular day, we find out that Moses' father-in-law happens to be there, and he watches everything that he's doing. Look at verse 14. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, now I kind of wonder what Moses thinks he's going to say. What's he expect his father-in-law to say after all that he has seen him doing for the people? When I first moved to California, I remember my parents would call every once in a while and we'd talk. And I just remember almost every time I talked to them, I would just be telling them how busy I was. I just wanted them to be convinced that I was over the top busy. And I would tell them all the things I was doing because I was desperately desiring that they would be proud of me. I hoped my busyness would make them feel like I was doing something meaningful. I wonder if there are people in your life that you hope will see you doing good things. People that you would love to hear tell you that you're doing a good job, that they're proud of you, that it's enough. People that you kind of like imagine, man, I wish I could have a day like Moses. Just doing good from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, and I wish this person could see it all. Ultimately, all of our longings for approval from others, they flow from a deep desire to hear from our God that we've done enough. We want Him to see all that we do for others and say, good job, well done, I'm proud of you, it's enough. And because we can't see God, and because we don't hear His audible voice saying that, it's not uncommon for us to feel insecure about how He might think of us. And so we find ourselves desperately grasping for the approval of others to kind of bolster our sense that maybe we are doing enough. So what does Moses' father-in-law tell him when he sees all the good that he is doing for the people? Well, before he gives his assessment, we see in verse 14 that he asks a couple of questions. He says, well, what is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand around you from morning to evening? It seems like before Jethro gives Moses his approval, he wants to make sure that everything he's doing is actually good and that it's actually necessary. So Moses answers this question, verse 15 and 16. Moses says, I'll answer those questions because the people come to inquire of God. They come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me. I decide between one person and another. I make them know the statutes of God and His law. You can tell Moses is pretty confident that what he is doing is pretty important. The people come to me to hear about God. When they have disputes that they can't figure out on their own, they come to me and I settle them for them. I tell them the words of God. Clearly, Moses believes that what he is doing is both important and necessary. What could be more important or good than telling people about God? And obviously, if it wasn't necessary, why are people lined up so far to hear it? So now that his father-in-law knows that what he is doing is good and that what he is doing is necessary, he expects to hear his father-in-law's approval. Well, look at verse 17. Let's see what he says. Jethro says to Moses, what you are doing is not good. I think in order to really understand this, I know it's kind of meant to shock you. I'm sure it shocked Moses. It's helpful to fill in what he is doing, to just read the gap of what he is doing to understand what's not good. Remember what he is doing? He's already told his father-in-law what he's doing. He's working from morning to evening to teach people God's law and help them apply it to their lives. That's what he is doing. So what Jethro says to him is working from morning to evening in order to teach God's people, his laws, and help them apply them to their lives is not good. That's what's not good. That's what he is doing, and it's not good. That's probably a little shocking, right? It's certainly shocking to Moses. It's shocking to me. I mean, I don't want to speak for Moses. Shocking to me. Well, in verse 18, Jethro explains why all that Moses is doing is not good. He says, you and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. One of the reasons that what Moses is not doing is for all that Moses is doing for God's people is not good, is because it's too much. We see here that there are good things that are not good for us to do. I mean, nobody can argue that what Moses spends his entire day doing is good. Everything he's doing is a good thing. But his father-in-law says there are good things that are not good for you to do. And they're not good for him to do because they're too much. Now, the thing is, it gets complicated because it actually wasn't too much for him to do that day. It wasn't too much physically for him to do. He did it. Then he went home. And so we can't just look and say, as long as I can physically do it and survive, then it's okay. Moses physically survived the day. Still, what he was doing was not good. So just because something's good, just because there's a genuine need, just because we can physically do it and survive does not mean that it is good for us to do. Our God made humans to be limited, which means he made us to be unable to accomplish all the good that could be done. And he calls us to accept that. I've always just believed that that is something to be fought against. And here you see he's calling us to accept that, not fight it. Only God can do all the good that needs to be done. And when we fight against that, trying to do it ourselves, when we fight against our God-given limitations, we end up fighting to be like God. I don't know if you remember, that's what got Eve in trouble in the first place. This desire to be like God, to be able to do all the good that needs to be done. In one of his books, Zach Eswine writes a lot about learning to accept our human limitations. In a chapter dedicated to our temptations to try and fix it all, he says this: we cannot do everything good that needs to be done, which means that Jesus will have to teach us to live with the things we can neither control nor fix. We will want to resist Jesus and act as if we're omnipotent, but we will harm others and we will harm ourselves when we try. Others will also resist Jesus. Using his name, they will praise or critique us, promote or overlook us according to their desire that we fix everything for them and that we do it immediately. But they too will have to learn that only Jesus can fix everything. And there are some things that Jesus leaves unfixed for his glory. Notice, not only do you and I find ourselves overwhelmed with this compulsive longing to fix everything, but other people also have expectations for us. Oftentimes their praise or their critique is going to be based on how successfully we live up to their expectations. And what Eswine is trying to say is that when we seek to live within our God-given limitations, we will inevitably disappoint a lot of people. And that's okay, because they too will have to learn that only Jesus can fix everything that needs to be fixed. And there are things that he leaves unfixed for his glory. This text comes to remind us that God is not like our own inner critic with its divine expectations, nor is he like others who demand that we fix them. Our God does not demand that we take his job. He doesn't ask us to take his job. He made us limited and calls us to live within those limitations. To recognize, to believe that he is far better at being God than we ever could be. That's why it goes on to say, being human doesn't mar greatness, it informs it. It sets its noble boundaries. How have we come to believe otherwise? Now here's what's even more scary. Our physical limitations, they cry out when we try to rebel against them, right? Burnout, exhaustion, impatience, frustration. These are often the results of pushing ourselves beyond the limited, the physical limitations that God has ordained. But being human, it means that we don't just have physical limitations, we also have spiritual needs. And here's the danger. Our human limitations, they get louder and louder the more you ignore them until finally they refuse to be ignored. You know, you can miss so much sleep until finally your body will rebel against you. Our human limitations grow louder and louder the more we ignore them, but our souls grow softer and softer the more they're ignored. That's the danger. The danger is that there are people that may be able to push themselves physically for their whole lives, doing good, only to die realizing their souls shriveled up a long, long time ago. I mean, that's what Jesus says, right? In Matthew 25, 26, those people, they got the long list of things that they do for Jesus. All the good that they do for him. All the good they did for him, Jesus says, was not good. You would have been better off taking a few breaks and seeking to know me. Let me be me instead of fighting to fix it all, to be everywhere for everyone, to satisfy people's divine expectations. Our God one of the gifts of God that we're going to hear about in a few weeks more deeply, one of the gifts of God to help us, both our body and soul, is the Sabbath. One day in 7 that he calls us to turn down the noise, to prioritize resting and gathering with God's people, and to turn down the noise so that we can hear the whisper of our souls. A day to remember God does not need us. If he needed us, then he would let us work 7 days a week, but he doesn't need us, nor anything that we can accomplish. In our busyness, we often begin to believe that we're actually necessary, that there are certain good things that we must accomplish. And when our busyness rises to the place where we're no longer able to gather with God's people, to gaze upon his beauty, we can be sure that we're losing sight of just how desperately we need God. Our God made the world in a couple of words. He rescued his people out of Egypt without breaking a sweat. He doesn't need us. He's far more concerned with us knowing him than in anything you will ever do for him. So we've seen that it is possible to attempt to do more good than we are capable of. There's a second truth in this text, and that truth is this: no matter how much good you do, it'll never be enough. I want you to let this reality sink in. Even your too much will never be enough. You see, that's the lie I believed during the week of Serve the City. It's the lie that Moses probably believed after his hard day of work, that his too much would be enough if he just keep doing it. And his father-in-law comes and he says, no, this is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. Your too much isn't enough. And so even if you do give your life to doing too much, it's still never going to be enough. Jethro goes on to give Moses some good advice about how to delegate things so it'll be easier for him. Let other people bear the burden. Typically, we read this passage, we apply it to like good leadership and the importance of learning to delegate. But I do think when we stop at that application, we end up missing the underlying heart issue that this text exposes. You'll notice one of Jethro's questions is, why are you doing this? You see, there's a reason why we try to do more than we're humanly capable of. There's a reason why we seek to go beyond our limits. There's a reason why, and it's not that we don't know how to delegate. I'm pretty sure that we learn how to delegate when we're really little, because Acacia is a genius at it. She spends her day delegating. So I'm pretty sure instead of just saying that the point of this text is that we should delegate, we ought to go a little step deeper and say, why is that so hard for us to do? You see, there's a reason why many of us find ourselves working so fervently to do good, and it's because deep down inside we're trying our best to do enough. The questions we ask ourselves at the end of the night, the guilt that we feel as we try to go to bed, it's because we are desperately afraid that maybe we need to do more. Maybe we haven't done enough. And even that question, what do we even mean by that? What is this enough? Well, whatever this enough means, it has to have something to do with God's love for us, something to do with his approval of us. That's what makes it so powerful. We long to do enough to hear God say, well done. When we know God is pleased, if you knew 100% that God was pleased with you, then you would know it's enough. Then you would be able to rest. But here's the thing, as long as you and I believe that God's well done is based on how much good we do, it'll never be enough. And we'll never be able to rest until it's done. And you will never be able to joyfully delegate to someone else something you believe must be accomplished for God's approval. Can you imagine that? Right? It's like a group project in school, right? Some of you are probably not very good at letting anyone else help you, right? If your whole grade depends on it, you better have your fingers in it. You cannot delegate something you believe needs to be accomplished for you to be enough. Jesus is fully aware of our tendency to try and do enough through our own efforts. In John 6:28, the crowds even ask him. They ask him the question that we often ask ourselves: what do we have to do to be doing the works of God? What needs to be done to please God? What do we have to do to gain his love and his approval? What do we have to do to be able to lay down at night and rest because we know we've done enough? Well, Jesus answers that question, John 6:29. He says, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent." The work that God requires for us is that we cling to Jesus and him alone to be our enough. Philippians 3:3, Paul writes, "For we are the circumcision who worship by the Spirit of God, glory in Christ Jesus, and put no confidence in the flesh." The work that God requires of us is that we stop trying to do enough. That we stop basing our identity on anything that we could ever accomplish. That we stop comparing ourselves to others, stop laying awake at night thinking about all the things that we haven't completed. You'll notice Paul doesn't lay awake at night beating himself up for all the good things that he could be doing. Instead, he says, I consider all the good things on my list I haven't gotten to rubbish. I consider them all rubbish, he says. Indeed, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things. I count them rubbish in order that I could gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness that comes from the law. That means not having a righteousness that comes from anything I've accomplished or could do or anything on my list. But that which comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness that depends on God. It comes from God and depends on faith. So Claire, when you find yourself overwhelmed with all that you failed to accomplish, when you realize all the time you've wasted and how much good you've left undone, when you've worked yourself to the bone and still feel somehow that you're inadequate, it's not a time to despair, but to rejoice. Rejoice because you are in the process of learning a very difficult truth, and that is that you are not and will never be on your own and in your own strength enough. You can't do enough. Your too much isn't enough. It's because your too much isn't enough that you don't have to keep doing too much. Instead, you can look somewhere else. Because the rest that Jesus offers us is not something that he wants us to enjoy after a hard day's work. The rest that he offers us is something that he comes to give us in the morning. We are convinced that rest is to be something that we do after we've earned it. After we've worked hard all day, after we've checked things off the list, after we can show some tangible reason why our presence on this earth is helpful. That's not where you get your enough. That's not what you have to be before you can rest. All of God's work in the Exodus, what was it for? That they may know me, that I am the Lord. I mean, can you really read the Exodus and think that God is like rescuing his people so that they can accomplish a bunch of things that he couldn't do on his own? He wants to be known. He wants to be worshiped.